Hey guys, Victor here, coming at you again with another deck profile, and for today's video we're going to be doing an updated Lightsworn Tearlament list, which as far as like the deck is concerned, if what I'm hearing is true in the fact that decks like K9 and Yummy, for example, don't really care about hand traps too much, that typically means that we're going to be shifting to a more board breaker approach for the format. And in those types of formats, decks like these really thrive, right? Because hand traps are basically like the biggest detriment to the deck. And as far as like board breakers are concerned, we genuinely don't really care all that much about them, especially in a deck like this that has Tearlaments in it. That means that it's typically just like naturally resistant to it. So with that in mind, let's jump straight into it. As always, we're going to be starting off with the monster lineup first, and we're going to be focusing on the Lightsworn portion before we get to the others. So, as a result, we're going to be playing 3 Weiss Lightsworn Archfiend. It's the only Lightsworn monster in the deck that we're going to be playing at 3, and that's because it's basically the best one at helping you just bridge all your engines together, right? So, right off the bat, it's a level 4 tuner monster, which means that you're going to be able to access your level 8 synchros, or if you don't want to synchro, this also opens up like potential like seed plays, or it's just like general link fodder. And by link fodder, I mean it gives you access to your entire Fiendsmith engine because it's a light fiend monster. So even if you have this card and you don't have like any other Lightsworn monsters to pair with it in your hand, you can still just normal summon it, and then it's still full Fiendsmith combo. And then by the time like the Fiendsmith combo resolves, we basically have all the resources we need, ideally. But that's not to mention that like its effects are obviously really powerful as well, right? As you're able to reveal this card from your hand, take a brick like Wulf Release, put it on top of your deck, special summon itself, and then mill 2 cards, and that includes the card that you put on top, right? So it's just a free way to just continuously generate value. And as for its graveyard effect, when it's milled, it's able to special summon any of your Lightsworn monsters from your graveyard except itself, which just allows us to further extend, right? Like this card, it really just does help you bridge all 3 aspects of the deck pretty seamlessly. Then, to accompany that one, for our 2 ofs in the Lightsworn department, we're playing 2 Lightsworn Dragonling, which, while this is of course a phenomenal card, right, as if it hits the field and its effect resolves, the game is basically wrapped up because what it's going to be doing on its own is it's going to special summon itself, send like a Felis. Felis will come back, you make the Minerva Synchro, send 2 more, then you synchro those into like your Visas Amritara. Visas Amritara will then in turn search any Tearlaments spell or trap that you may need, so you can get your Primeval Planet, your Scream, any traps, whatever. Then, because you have enough monsters in your graveyard, Minerva will mill 4 more cards, which lets you deplete your deck even further. And then, as if that wasn't already enough, you then finally get to make the Zombie Vampire to mill 4 more cards and get another free special summon. And that's all off of 1 Lightsworn Dragonling resolving, which, you know, obviously pretty good. Now you'd be wondering, why don't I play 3? And the fact of the matter is that we can pretty much do that play even without Dragonling, and in a lot of situations it definitely feels like a win more card, but or not like a win more card, but like as a backup plan in case our main plays get stopped, which, you know, sometimes they do, but yeah, we just genuinely don't need to rely on this. And even if we don't open up with it, as long as we get it into the graveyard, we always have a way to bring it back and still take advantage of its effect. So yeah, 2 Lightsworn Dragonling, perfectly fine. And then to accompany our 2 Dragonlings, we're playing our 2 Felis Lightsworn Archers, which yeah, obviously when you mill this card, it's able to special summon itself, which, you know, fantastic. But the main reason why we focus on Felis over something like Wulf, right, is because it happens to be a tuner monster, and we pretty much just want to be able to access our synchro monsters whenever we can. And then speaking of Wulf, we just play 1. I guess this to me is basically like the ideal ratio, at least in my mind, right? So we have our 2 tuner monsters that can come back, but they're not always going to be able to be special summoned because they have to be milled by a monster effect, right? And we do play spell cards that mill, like our Tearlaments Scream. And in situations like those, Wulf is just slightly better because as long as Wulf is milled, it'll always come back. But we don't really want to play too many Wulfs because it's just a big beat stick compared to the Felis. I hope that makes sense. So basically, tuner greater than no tuner, but you want to play 1 in cases of emergencies where, you know, they just get milled by cards like Tearlaments Scream or like a Foolish Burial or something, in order to actually just trigger it and bring it back from the graveyard. But yeah, you know, with that, that's the Lightsworn portion. Perfectly fine. I think that's close to perfect, but you know, ratios can always be changed around for everything except for Weiss. Then for the Tearlament portion, we're playing our 3 Tearlaments Kashtira to be able to mill 3 more cards and then potentially 2 more cards when it's sent from either the field or the hand or the deck to the graveyard. As long as it goes by card effect, it's able to trigger. Then we're playing 2 Tearlaments Reinoheart because this isn't a pure Tearlament deck. We don't need to rely too heavily on Reinoheart being like our main normal summon, right? And 2 is pretty much like the perfect sweet spot for it, as we're going to be milling it at some point. And even if you like don't mill it, we have plenty of ways to have access to it because of cards like Visas Amritara searching us out, cards like our Tearlaments Grief or our Primeval Planet Perlereino, that it's not like we're struggling to have access to it at some point, right? But, you know, on normal or special, it foolishes any of your tier monsters except itself, so you can either fusion summon or mill 2 more depending on what you send. And it's another level 4 monster, which means that it just gives us more synergy for our potential level 8 synchros or rank 4 plays, or if we just need a body for like a link 2 play or whatever. Then for the 1 of tiers, you're playing the 1 of Tearlaments Scheiren, the 1 of Tearlaments Merrli, and the 1 of Tearlaments Havnis. They all allow us to mill 3 cards if you're able to meet their conditions, like I always say, and these are the ones that allow us to fusion summon. So yeah, you know, we're only allowed to play 1 of each, so we play 1 of each. And that's it for the Tearlament portion. And then for the other cards, just to help the deck out just a slightly bit more, we're playing 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. It doesn't help us combo, but it does allow us to prevent our opponent from mole charming us, which, you know, pretty good, because if our opponent hits us with like a Foolos or something, the game is basically over, unfortunately. Then for the other cards, we're playing 2 Fiendsmith Engraver, 1 Lacrima of the Crimson Tears, and the 1 Fabled Lurrie. This is pretty much like the go-to standard package when it comes to the Fiendsmith engine itself, as you pretty much get the best of both worlds, right? Like you could play more than 1 engraver, or I mean, you could play more than 2 engravers and play 3 of it, but it's just not really necessary. And in all honesty, if you really wanted to, you can get away with just playing 1. But this one, you know, you get to see it a lot of the time. We play the you get to see this a lot of the time. We play the Lacrima to be able to access our Fiendsmith in Paradise whenever we want. And then we just have Fabled Lurrie in here because it's basically a free discard. And you don't always want to like search something else. Or I guess a better way of putting it is that when it comes to Fabled Lurrie, sometimes when you activate Tract, you just want to have it and then discard it, especially if you're hit by like a Perlereino, right? So you just always want to have that kind of option to be able to try and play around any potential hand traps, I guess. And that's it for the Fiendsmith. And then for the final card, we're just playing the 1 Mudora, the Sword Oracle, because we need some kind of shuffler, as we are 100% going to be milling at least 35 of our 40 cards. So it's very, very easy to deck out, especially when you're able to go uninterrupted. So with that, that's the monster lineup, and now we can finally move on to the spell and trap portion. Now that we're on the spell and trap portion of the video, we'll be starting off with our 3 of Primeval Planet Perlereino. Now, there are arguments for just being able to play just 1, just mainly because like it is searchable, right? You just summon out your Visas Amritara and you have access to this card whenever you want, but I feel like 3 is probably the best way to play it, just because it means that you're going to be able to see it more consistently, and that means you can save your Visas Amritara for other cards like your Tearlaments Scream, your Tearlaments Grief, your Sulliek, your metanoise, whatever. But regardless, this card is just phenomenal at helping you get your play started, because it searches your deck for any of your Tearlament monsters, so you can get your Rhino, your Tear Caches, your Fusion Summoners, whatever. And then it also allows you to go for game a little bit more easily, because it boosts all your Tears and your Fusions by 500 attack. And as if that wasn't already enough, whenever a Tearlament is shuffled back into the deck, you're able to pop a card on the field, and that includes your own, right? So there's like a lot of really cute plays that you can make with cards like Planet, where you can pop like a set Sulliek to search a monster, you can pop a Scream to search a trap, you can pop like a Kaleidoheart in order to Foolish, special summon itself back, and then depending on what you Foolish, you get another effect. But point is, like, this card has so many uses in the deck that I feel like 3 is pretty much like a no-brainer when it comes to Planet. And then for the other 3 that we're playing in the deck, we're playing 3 Tearlaments Scream. Whenever you or your opponent decides to normal or special summon and you have a face-up Tearlament monster, you get to mill 3 more cards, and then for the rest of this turn, all of your opponent's monsters lose 500 attack. So the 500 attack is just like a weird extra bonus that we get, but we really care about is being able to just mill 3 cards every single turn, because that means that we're going to be able to access our fusion monsters just a little bit more easily and more consistently, right? Then when this card is sent to the graveyard by card effect, it's able to search your deck for any of your Tearlament traps, being either Sulliek, metanoise, or depending on if you're going into games 2 or 3, cards like Tearlaments Crime as well. But yeah, just like another great consistency piece. And then that's it for the 3 ofs. We don't play any 2 ofs, but for the 1 ofs, we're playing the 1 Triple Tactics Talent, as well as the 1 Call by the Grave to punish our opponent for hand trapping us. We're playing the 1 Fiendsmith Tract and the 1 Fiendsmith Sanct. Just good targets that we can search off of our engraver. And then in the form of like Fiendsmith Tract, right, it adds any light fiend, so you can also add a Weiss to your hand if the situation calls for it. So this is essentially just like another pseudo Charge of the Light Brigade, which we are not playing just because I hate milling 3 for cost, because it means we do not trigger any of our tier cards. But yeah, this is just like another avenue that we have to be able to easily access our Weiss, Lightsworn, Archfiend. And then in the case of like Fiendsmith Sanct, this is literally just Hornet drones, right? It gives you a free token that gives you full access to your Fiendsmith engine. So it's just like another solid card that we can play. And then we're also playing one Foolish Burial to be able to send any monster, as well as one Tearlaments Grief to be able to special summon any tier monster from either our grave or our deck. And then the only thing is that you have to send a monster on your side of the field that has the same type or attribute, but it's not very hard because you can just, like, say, for example, you summon a Reinoheart, you can send that same Reinoheart, and then you'll trigger its graveyard effect to come back, and it's basically the same thing, right? But yeah, that's it for the spells. And then for the traps, the 2 Tearlaments Sulliek to be able to negate monster effects as well as search our Tearlament monsters. Tearlaments metanoise to be able to potentially book a Moon monster, but more importantly, this is the one that allows us to add back our tears from the graveyard, especially when it comes to Tearlaments Kashtira, because that's something that we pretty much just always want in our hand at any given moment. And then lastly, we play the 1 Fiendsmith in Paradise, just so that we have like another layer of interaction to play during our opponent's turn. And with that, that's the spell and trap lineup, and now we can finally move on to the extra deck. Now that we're on the extra deck portion of the video, we'll be starting off with the Exceed monsters first, and as a result, we're going to be playing the 1 number 62 Years the Timeless, which we don't really care about the boost effect, but we do care about the other 2 effects, right? So we either are going to be drawing 2, discarding 1, which is just a great way of helping us dig through our deck a little bit more easily and then get rid of cards that we don't really want. So we can discard cards such as like our Sulliek or our Screams or just Lightsworn monsters that don't do anything, and then hopefully we drew something good. Or alternatively, we can also reborn cards such as our Lightsworn Dragonling, which we would probably have milled at some point. And then, like I said earlier in the video, if Dragonling gets special summoned in the game and it's able to resolve, the game is basically just over. So yeah, this card, it's just a great way for us to continuously push through our opponent's cards as well as just generate resources. Then to accompany that, we're playing the 1 Pilgrim Reaper just to be able to mill 5 more cards, and it mills from our deck and our opponent's deck too, right? So it gives you knowledge about what your opponent is playing, and then potentially it's able to get rid of key cards that they would much rather prefer being in their deck. We're not going to be playing High King Caesar in this build, mainly because I figured if our opponent has a Nibiru, they're going to be hitting us with it even before like this card comes out, just because they do not want to deal with Caesar in most situations, right? So I figured just play the 1 Pilgrim Reaper. If your opponent has the Nib, they're going to hit you way before this card even comes out. And honestly, it's working out so far, so like it can't be that bad of a mentality, right? And then for the final card, we're playing the 1 Zombie Vampire just to be able to mill 4 more cards and then get to special summon a monster that we milled, whether it's from our side or our opponent's side. And you know, sometimes there's just some really cute, funny interactions where you're able to special summon something like a Kashtira Fenrir from your opponent's deck, and then be able to search out a tier cache and then go full combo. So yeah, 1 Zombie Vampire, perfectly fine. And that's it for the Exceeds. And then for the Synchros, we're just playing the 1 Minerva, the Athenian Lightsworn, which pretty much is the main card that we use to be able to access everything, right? So you make this, you're going to be sending 2 more cards from your deck to the graveyard, just because you're typically going to be making this with 2 Lightsworn monsters. And then after that, you make another level 8 Synchro monster, and you've basically filled your graveyard with 4 Lightsworns. So from there, you're able to mill 4 more cards by banishing those 4 Lightsworn monsters. And like I said, when this card resolves, the game is basically just out of control for your opponent at that point. So yeah, Minerva, pretty good card. And the level 8 single monster that we're going to be summoning after we summon this one is going to be the Visas Amritara, of course, which searches out any of our Tearlaments spells and traps. So you get a Planet, Scream, Sulliek, metanoise, doesn't matter. You just get whatever you need for the situation. And then once you summon both of these, you finally overlay them into the Zombie Vampire, and then yeah, like the deck just, it amasses so much advantage so quickly that your opponent needs to have something to stop it if they just want to try and be in the game, right? But that's it for the Synchros. And then for the Links, we're going to be playing the 1 Fiendsmith Requiem to be able to, you know, summon out our Fiendsmith Engravers and our Lacrimas from the deck. Moon of the Closed Heaven, so that any 2 monsters become full Fiendsmith combo. Fiendsmith Sequence, which admittedly isn't really like the greatest card, but because we're leaning so heavily into the Fiendsmith aspect, we pretty much have to play it, as there are certain situations where you want to summon out cards like your Fiendsmith Desiree, as well as like just recycle cards like Weiss, right? So yeah, Sequence, perfectly fine. And then for the final Link monster, we're on SP Little Knight. And this is actually going to be one of your common end board pieces, and we're actually going to be getting value out of its banish effect too, right? Just because this is typically going to be made using cards like your Pilgrim Reaper or your Zombie Vampire, which have already milled cards from your opponent's deck, And so by being able to mill cards from our opponent's deck, we can then proceed to make the Little Knight and then banish a key card that they'll probably won't be able to access for the rest of the game. And we're actually going to be able to use its effect on turn 1, which is pretty rare in a lot of situations unless you're playing a deck like Malice, I guess. But yeah, Little Knight, really, really good card. And then that's it for the links. And then for the fusions, we're playing the Necroquip Princess so that all of our Light Fiend monsters that aren't engraver can become level 6 monsters. Fiendsmith Desiree, which admittedly, like I said, we're not really summoning this card a lot of the time. We're basically just using it for Fiendsmith in Paradise just to be able to have like another interaction with our opponent. But its effect is obviously still really powerful as well, as it's not an Omni Negate, but it's still able to negate crucial cards that our opponent decides to play. And then for the other fusions, we're playing the one Mud Dragon of the Swamp, the one Gura Wings of Resident Life, and the one Predaplant Dragostapelia, pretty much all staples in Tearlament decks that we are going to be summoning at some point, and you basically just like cycle through them at all times just to be able to always fusion summon whenever you can, right? And then for the final monster, we're playing the one Kaleidoheart, just because it's the Tearlament boss monster, right? On special summon, or if you send a Aqua monster from your deck to the graveyard, you're able to shuffle back any of your opponent's cards back into the deck. If it gets sent to the graveyard by card effect, and obviously it has to be on the field, right? You can't send it from the extra deck because then it's not properly fusion summoned, but it's able to bring itself back, then foolish any of your tier cards, and it's just like a general nuisance to have to deal with at any given moment. And with that, that's the Lightsworn Tearlament deck. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya!